Good morning.
Thank you so much for doing this, Pastor Tracy. This guy's one of the busiest guys in America. Just if you think about everything Free Chapel is, everything from there's the church side. We now have preschool. You have the television side of things we do. If you've grown up here, you've seen the different buildings that we built. Everything from I started in this campus just like you did. I used to sit right up there, right about there where Christine's sitting. Me and my wife would sit right there on Sundays. Saw the big campus built over there, all those things. Then we started adding campuses. We added Orange County first, then Gwinnett. And then after Gwinnett came, Buford? Came Buford. After Buford came Spartanburg, and then came Cumming, and then came Midtown, and then came Brazelton. And so that spans clear back to 2007. And so when you look at the gravity of that and the magnitude of that, Pastor Franklin, he sets the vision, and then Tracy's responsible for helping carry out that vision. But every single thing I just said, Tracy had to lead. Every single thing, including now over, I think, 100 staff at all of our campuses. And so it's quite a daunting task that he has. Tracy, I appreciate you doing this and you being here with us. We've known each other since 2003 when I started coming. And not long after I started coming, we were doing these things called illustrated sermons. There's so many of these students that want to do a watch night where we watch the old illustrated sermons.
I want to be a part of that.
You come on and be there. You can give some background for each of those. But Tracy and I toured the nation with students all during those years, 2003, 2004, all the way up through 2010 or whenever it was, taking students all over the country doing these illustrated sermons. We'd do it here first, and then we'd take it all over the country. And so we've worked together since that time. And I'm just honored to have you here with us today, Tracy.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm honored to be asked by you, by Pastor Aaron. How many of you love Pastor Aaron? And thank you for those kind words, Aaron. You're a mighty man of God. You too, Dr. Rich. You're just amazing. The whole FC college team is just, Jordan, watching you up here. I remember when I first met you, I said that you got a call on your life, and to see you up here leading these young college people is pretty amazing, and just honored to be here. I have been asked. It's not because I didn't want to. It is because there's just always something that happens. But I am honored to be here, and just thank you for this opportunity, and pray that God uses me today to deposit something into your life. I tell, the worst thing for me is ever just becoming a talking head and telling you stuff to regurgitate things that you've already heard and read. But I pray that there's something that I share that really impacts your life, and that you leave here not looking at me, but you see God. That's what we're here to do. That's what you're here to learn about, is how can God use you and people see Christ in you. And some of the things that you mentioned, Dr. Rich, as far as those illustrated sermons, how God had used those things and how God has used you and Rachel and the whole team is just amazing. And to make yourself a vessel that God can work through and being open. I'm so proud. I got to be in the campus pastor meeting. We lead that every Thursday. And I got to share with Pastor a little bit about how much the Easter production means to me, and I love illustrated sermons, and I'll get into that, the reason why that has such a deep part of who I am in just a few moments. But to see each and every one of you play a part in that production, when I got to see so many of you run out on the stage, the behind the scenes people, I have a deep respect and honor for that. I'm more of a behind the scenes kind of guy myself. And this is probably not my favorite thing to do, but who knows, God can use anything, and pray that he uses this. But to see the production take place and to know that each one of you played such a vital part of that. And to hear the reports each week at the campuses, that the feedback from those campus pastors, that really Sunday morning does not happen without each of you. And what you play, you hold a dear place in our heart, because it is the vision of our pastor to see you, young people. We honor yesterday, but we're inspiring for tomorrow. That is so important to us. Those aren't just words that we make up because everybody else has core values, but that is something that we value. And to see how God is using you and to inspire the next generation, to see the elders in the church and how you honor them and respect them, and how you hold yourself in high esteem, and you're willing to let God just work through you. It's just pretty amazing. It's a dream come true, to be honest with you. I know I'm going off script a little bit, but I want to talk about a little bit about the college and why you're so important. When we started talking about, when I became the executive pastor of the church, I think that was 13 years ago. I've actually been on staff for 21 years. And I've been in this role for 13 years and traveled the world, seen everything, and God's just opened doors. I mean, I'm the least, I feel like Gideon sometimes. I'm the least of these, to be used by God, but to be in this position. But when we talked about how are we going to make this division, how are we going to, Pastor, if you know Pastor, he has this vision, this dream, and hopefully you've got a piece of that, and you've picked some of that up because it's so inspiring, and it just inspired me all the time when I'd hear him say things. And I want to build churches. I want to have a church in every state, and we thought about that. Here we are running Gainesville, and we started Orange County, and that was such a challenge, and Dr. Rich played such a vital part in making that possible. But man, you're talking about challenges. When you talk about building something that big, you see the operations of the church, and and the roles that you play. And we said, how are we going to do this? How are we going to ever, when you go to hire people, when you go through that process, it's months, it's years, it's finding people that have the right attitude, the right spirit about them. And to make that possible, we said, there's no way. And, God, you said it, but how are we going to do it? And we depended on him completely. But we had this dream of raising up young people, building a college that would help sustain the vision, and to find people that grab a hold of the heart of not what just Free Chapel is, but what the kingdom is, what God is trying to do in this generation, and to carry that mission forward, and to be a part of that. And so we just prayed, God, what do we do? What do we do? We've heard of Master's Commissions we've done. If you've never heard of that, it's another organization that they raise up young people and they come be a part of your church. We send people through that. We did internships. We did it all. But there was still something missing, and we said, we have to be able to bring in the best students inside the house and then outside, so that we can plant, not just in Free Chapel community, but for other churches. Because I think if you get selfish and you only think about yourself all the time and you don't forget about others, that God limits you. And so our mindset was not just to raise up people for this campus and for our church, our vision, but God, to raise up other young people that come here, grab a hold of what God's used us to do, and carry that out to help other churches. Everybody has a part in building the kingdom. And so we started that out. And I remember when we started the college, it was a daunting task. I remember we met with Dr. Rutland, who is president of ORU, and he said, don't do it. He said, you have no idea the headache that you're about to get into. And of course, when you hear Dr. Rutland tell you something like that, you're listening. But we still felt that urge. And his thing was not that he didn't believe in young people. He just knew that what it took to invest in that. And if you're not really committed to that process, it's not going to be sustainable. And so, but anyway, we pressed on through. And I remember meeting with the staff, Dr. Rich, you remember that. It's like, how can we do this with the college we barely can get our work done ourselves. And now you're telling me that you got to send 5 people that I have to train every day to learn. And it was just a challenge, but the grind of pressing through, and now to see how much the college has grown and that vision, and to see so many of you on staff and some of you in intern roles. I think about some of the kids and the pastors that have called me and said, hey, we need people for a children's ministry, and we need people, a youth pastor, we need a musician, we need these things. And to see that vision carry out, to see you guys fulfilling that promise that God gave us, that vision to put campuses. We would never be where we are without you. And don't ever let the enemy say that what you're doing now is insignificant to him, because who knows, you don't understand the vision that you're pushing up. You're helping us carry out the vision that God put on our lives to do this. And you guys have been such a blessing. So that's why I'm so honored to be here to share with you, but to also say thank you, to know the commitment, the discipline that it takes to get up and you could be anywhere. I think Pastor says this all the time. You could be anywhere. But here you are on a Monday morning, sitting here listening to me. Here you are, committed the whole year. I'm just glad that when Aaron asked, what are we going to do every year? And somebody said, we get lit. I thought one of you said we're going to quit. And I was like, I just prayed that was not the case with all of you. But I'm just not caught up with some of that. So I had to lean over and ask my wife. By the way, my wife is here with me today. The best part of who I am. So love you, babe. So anyway, Dr. Rich, sorry about that, but just thank you, college.
Well, you went to Becky. Let's start there. So Becky, stand up. This is Becky Page.
Oh, wow.
One of the sweetest, kindest people that you'll ever meet. Tell us about your family. We got some pictures we're going to kind of show you here, but tell us about your family. Where did you and Becky meet?
Oh, wow. Met here at the church, as a matter of fact. So much in this building means so much to me. I got saved here in 1993. That's probably way older than most of you. How many?
Back in the 1900s.
Yeah, do y'all even remember what was going on in the 1900s? No, of course not. But 1993, I got saved here at the church, and just remember walking into this place, and my mom just kept asking me, son, come to church. And I'm like, Mom, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. At that point in my life, I was just all over the place, partying.
You grew up local here?
I grew up local here, if you can't tell by the accent. But yeah, I've been here all my life. But just stayed out on the lake all the time. Just a crazy, it was like so many young people without a purpose, without direction. But, I've watched my friends growing up, so many of them that would play church. And I swore I'd never be that person, and never wanted to be anything. I held that as a high badge of honor of like, I'm not going to be that hypocrite and come to church. But anyway, my mom had asked me to come to church, and the reason I think God was tenderizing my heart at the moment, I was really close to my grandfather growing up, and he was dying of liver cancer. He's an alcoholic, and I just watched my mom during that season of her life, just so much compassion, just so much love, where it was just doing amazing work in her life. And sometimes God can take pain and turn it into a purpose. And And God just began to use my mom in that way. And her words to me, instead of becoming angry at me all the time for knowing the lifestyle that I was living, became just so full of passion, grace, and she just started speaking over me. And so my mom just said, hey, come to church. I would love for you to come to church. And I heard about this pastor that, man, he had long hair back in the day. That was like most of your pastors that you knew, or, I don't know. It's just the pastors I knew, the experience wasn't really good, and it was boring, and I said, I'm not going to do that. But finally I came, and man, I remember God just wrecked my life that day. I walked in, just nothing's going to change how I feel. I'm doing this for my mom. Pastor preached a message called Divine Reversal. And I was sitting right over here in this front row, and just God wrecked my life. And I got up and went to the altar. It was an experience that I felt like that I don't even know how I got to the altar, but I was just so broken, where self was such a big part of who I was. I felt so relieved, I guess, of like, I don't have to live this image that I've built up. That, this has been said that the greatest days of your life, 2 greatest moments are when you're born and when you discover your purpose. And that day I felt like that I finally realized my purpose. And my purpose wasn't for me. My purpose was for a greater purpose. It was for God, to lay my life down for him. And I understood that moment. And so I got saved here. That was on October the 3rd, 1993. And I remember that day I was supposed to go to a party right after church. My friends like, you can go to church. Finally, you're going to go to church. You're going to go and you're going to come back and be the same. I remember going and telling my friends that right after church, I can't be here anymore. I mean, God began to immediately separate me. And I couldn't explain what happened. But there was definitely a marked moment in my life, a separation point. And so much so that even when I tried to explain it, my friends were trying to fight me. And I was like, what is going on with you? You think you're better than us now, But anyway, it was just a moment that changed my life forever and began to separate myself from people. October the 10th, I got filled with the Holy Spirit. I was still addicted to nicotine, and from that moment, God set me free of that desire, that moment. And I just say that to some of you, I'm not naive to know that some of you still struggle in areas of your life, things that you're even called, that you feel God in your heart, he's moving in your heart, but you're still struggling with areas. Man, the encounter with the Holy Spirit, that baptism of the Holy Spirit, that endowment of power that only comes from him, can pull those things out. But don't let the enemy tell you where you are, that you're not enough. And so from that moment, God began to separate me even more and more from those things. And I remember, Pastor, and this is back to the point about the illustrated sermons, Dr. Rich, that there was an illustrated sermon that God put on Pastor's heart to do. And he said, hey, I need volunteers. I'm like, okay, how hard could this be? I'm ready for God to use me. I volunteered, and sure enough, I come to find out that I was going to end up falling from a ceiling with a winch. That I don't even know how you get away with stuff that we used to do back then. It was just some crazy stuff. But I volunteered for that. I'm like, use me, God. Use me for this moment. And it's like, I fell from the ceiling, but I was falling into a pit of hell. And the part is so significant because at that moment, I knew God had changed my life, and my dad was my hero. My father and my dad were just people they were everything to me. I tried to live up to him. And my dad didn't set the greatest example, but he loved me. He cared about me. Maybe not the love and direction that he didn't know in Christ, but he wanted me to be a good person. He put so many great values in me that that I just loved and still to this day is my hero. But I'll get emotional there. But anyway, so the part that I was going to play in this illustrated sermon is a young son that was fallen into a pit in hell and coming out of that, saying to his dad, "Why didn't you tell me about this place? Why didn't you lead me?" And could you imagine, I'm a father now, and you probably can't imagine that, but Rich, I'm sure you do, and the responsibility that you feel as a father that you carry, like the want to see your kids doing the right thing and living right. In that moment, I knew that God was going to use me to impact my dad's life. So specific in that role for me that right over there in that seat, probably 7, 8 rows up on the side, I can point you to where I prayed that my mom would sit my dad that day. And we prayed over that seat. And my dad came down to the altar that day, and his life was changed forever. That was October the 31st. And my dad's never been the same. My dad, doesn't cuss, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. I've never seen him mad at somebody. And that's so opposite of who my dad was. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is God is real. And that moment is why these illustrated sermons and those things that we do are so dear to my heart. And seeing how God used me during that season.
If you have a parent that doesn't know Christ that you're praying for, raise your hand.
It's beautiful.
What would you say to them?
Don't give up praying for you. And the Bible says in Psalms, it says that he has set you as a solitaire in your family. In other words, what he's doing in your life, God is going to use it to bring your parents out. And keep praying, keep believing. And just like the way that the greatest example that you can be, in the same way that my mom shifted that focus even with me, I believe, is like, in all of us, we know right and wrong, right? Do you feel like you have a pretty good compass of what right and wrong is? Most parents, if you're in this college, you've been taught, be respectful. Don't do drugs, don't do these things. But the biggest thing is like, it's hard because we have this selfish desire in ourselves, and we feel like we want to control our lives. And so we've in surrendering to Christ, it is laying down your life for His purpose. And so when we discover that we that with our parents, and how my mom did for me was not like, you got to do the right thing. It was like, I want to love on you. I want to show you compassion. And I would just say to that is like, the number one thing that you can do to win your parents is to honor them. The Bible says, honor your parents. And you know what is the promise of that? And you all know that. He says, I'll give you long life. And so honor your parents. My mom did that. She became very disciplined. She'd pray for me. She would talk to me about the positive things that she was seeing in my life. And I'd say that to you is, I've started feeling an honor. Instead of judging me, I felt an honor. And I'd say that to you, is that if you would just be disciplined, the things that the enemy will use to say that doesn't matter, that she's not noticing, your parents aren't noticing, they do notice. They will notice your commitment to doing things in excellence, and they will understand who that comes from, and they will discover God through you. And I can't wait to rejoice for all of you that raised your hand of the amazing testimony. And what a beautiful day that is. I'll never forget seeing my dad come to the Lord. And I still hold that deep in my heart. And he will do the same for you.
Absolutely. So Becky's not just your wife. She's also the mother of your children. And so tell them about your children.
Oh, yeah. Where did it go? I can't see the picture. Which one is it?
It's right here, behind the sign.
Guys, that's Madison.
Looks like you're 14 years old. Or,
Look at those sideburns. And that's Madison now. And the reason we wanted to show that picture to you is obviously to show you my beautiful wife and my beautiful daughter. But I thought that was important because we were very young, just like many of you are. And my daughter, Madison, there is 25. She'll be 26 years old. And that was a moment as a father when I looked into her eyes that when you think you know something, you realize you know nothing. When you look into the eyes, and I can imagine your parents when they first looked into your eyes and how much they dreamed to see you where you are right now and to give in your life to serve God. That is the greatest gift that I think that you can give back to your parents, is to know that they see you in ministry and see that you're committed to serving Him. And but also to know that some of you, I think, Becky, you were 21 years old, 22 during that time. And I'm sure some of you are pretty good in math and you can start figuring out some time frames there. And I mean that we had just been married a year and a half, 2 years when we had Madison, right? 2 years. And just God began to do some amazing things. I remember seeing Becky the first time, like I mentioned, right there. She had this white shirt on, and I don't even know if you still have it, but it has the little fluffy things on the...
you didn't save that shirt?
Gosh, I remember looking at her and I was like, my goodness, Lord, I am going to marry that girl. The moment I saw her, I knew I was going to marry her. God is my witness. My cousin was at church with me. And just as soon as I told him, I said, I'm going to marry that girl. And God has just blessed us with 2 beautiful children. And she's been my partner in ministry and my best friend. And I just love her dearly. And the point of saying all of that is that so much of discovering who I am is in this church. And I feel that can be the same for you, that don't limit God and what He can do. You'll always find the answer that you're looking for inside God's purpose and plan and in His house. And I know that's true for me. And I know that if you commit yourself to His ways, He's got everything that you need, everything that you're searching for, everything that you desire. It's found in His presence. And you don't have to go chasing after anything.
And then got a picture of Carly there too. Not Carly. Yeah, Carly. Carly.
I got to see this picture.
She works in our preschool.
Oh, I don't see a picture of her. But anyway.
How many know Carly from preschool and everything? Yeah.
It's my baby. I see some of y'all from Kid Pack. Touch my life, man.
Let's shift the conversation to your calling and your progression from church attender to volunteer to director of children's pastor and then executive pastor.
Okay. Are y'all doing good? Is this okay? Okay. What was the first question?
Well, you were a volunteer,
Yeah.
so you fell in the pit of hell. But then at some point, you went from being a volunteer to and not just a volunteer that had a pretty good career, making really good money, a whole future lined out for you, but God had other plans.
It's great. Great question, Dr. Rich.
Laid awake all night long.
Let's see, as a volunteer in the church, just saw a need. And, I just... first of all, in children's ministries, where I kind of wanted to get plugged in, again, got saved, had my own kids, and I'm like, I don't want my kids to go through the things that I struggled with. That's kind of naive, as any parent would think. You try to shield your kids from everything. And things that even as a dad now I'm still learning, that there's things that only God can do in your life. But as parents, we try to do the best that we can. Know that about your parents. They only want the best for you. We show that in many different ways, but that's the uniqueness of us as parents. But for me as a volunteer, I just wanted to get plugged in. I wanted to serve. I wanted to make a difference. And me and my wife volunteered in Royal Rangers. It's a ministry that was here at the church. I can still tell you the Royal Ranger motto. Still tell you, man, we still have stories. We were so crazy back then that we'd come on a Wednesday night and teach a class. And there was this one little kid. I see you in green, and I'm going to talk to you about this in green. He was dressed in all green, and we used to call him a green bean. And you remember that back? He was so cute, that little kid. But anyway, we volunteered, and we were so committed to it, and just loved being a part, seeing kids' lives change. And we started there, and then had a chance to be involved in children. We worked in youth ministry. We did it all. We served in so many areas. I don't even know if the church, we had keys to the church at that point, so that we were so here every time. We just loved the house of God and wanted to be a part of what God was doing here. And that's why I'm encouraged to see some of you just out here hanging out and being a part. I mean, it's one thing to be assigned to something. It's another thing to be here because you desire to be here. No one has to tell you those things. And it's not part of a manual. It's in your heart. It's just something that God put in your heart, is to have a zeal for his house and what he's doing. And to see that. And so we volunteered, and then an opportunity came to be a part of the children's ministry. The children's ministry that was here was just, I never like building off anything that's negative. I always think everybody has a role to play, and the situation that was here was just different than what I thought it could be. And there was a season of transition. And man, I believe that when kids come to church, they should be bringing their parents to church every week. I knew what church looked like, and what I was afraid of church. I was like, man, church needs to be fun. Church needs to be a place that is that wow factor, that needs excellence about it. And so when I said, if I were ever given the opportunity to do it, these are some of the things that I would do. And lo and behold, when you ask God for something, he's going to open that door for you, and you better be ready to walk through it. And like you said, Dr. Rich, at the time, I was in a career with my dad. I owned a business, very successful business, just setting the pace and tone of everything, making good money. We had a house already. Some of the struggles that are in place that a lot of young people deal with. I know you guys wrestle with rent, but God had just prepared me. I worked all the time. Even growing up, my dad taught me work. And I just had a work ethic about me, a desire to when everybody else would go on spring break and do those things, I was working. I wanted to work. And God just used that, I guess, in this area. And so just with a spirit of excellence of everything that we do. And so to go into ministry, though, I had no ministry experience. I'm not like you. There wasn't a college to go to. We had this thing called the Spiritual Biblical Institution or something like that came. I don't know.
Spirit Vision Bible Institute.
Yeah, I don't know. So me and Beck went to that, and man, you could not look like you guys do to be a part of that. Man, this guy was so strict. We had to wear press shirts and khaki pants, and I was like, I am not going to make it here. And but anyway, I didn't have any training. And so, a lot of times we do things and we think we deserve something, but that we're owed this because of what we've done. And Pastor taught me a very valuable lesson is like, if you want it, trust God. He'll provide everything that you need. He said, there's no house, nor car, nor anything that you've given up in my name that I won't give it back to you. And I had to trust God with that. And I trust Pastor with the opportunity that he was given to me. And I trusted what God laid in my heart. To say all that, I sold everything. We sold our house. I moved in with my mom and dad. And that's a humbling thing, having a kid and moving in. But man, we dreamed. I worked 3 jobs. I worked here at the church. My dad was gracious enough, even after I went into ministry, he still allowed me to come and work and get hours to pay to sustain that. I used to be a stripper. It's funny. Let me correct this for you. I was a furniture stripper.
Let's edit that part before it goes out.
That's my one joke that you can leave here with. That's what I used to tell the kids, that I was a stripper, but I was strip furniture.
You have their attention now, Tracy.
I know. I've been waiting for that. So, but yeah, I would go after work. I mean, just working all day, and go and work till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, stripping furniture for my aunt, and work on Saturdays even on Saturdays, and then get ready for church and do all the things that I knew God had. And so I guess the point in saying that is that, sometimes that we can get caught up and look and see wherever someone's at now. God has blessed me. God has taken me around the world. God has showed me so many things, and we're blessed. I mean, we're tithers. We've laid our life down for the ministry, and just like I would never forget sitting at a Chili's restaurant and hearing Pastor tell me, and trust me, there's nothing that you'll give up in my name that I won't give it back to you, and seeing that fulfilled now and how far God's taken me at that point. But it's not just because you wish for it. It requires action from you. It requires you to work. There's no shortcuts in what you're doing. There's no, let me just find favor in someone's eye. That sometimes we kind of walk around and we try to, if they see me, if they notice me, then that's it. But that's not how you get attention. You get attention from God, from showing up, being faithful, honoring Him in the little things, creating a work habit. He's not going to give you something if He can't trust you to do it. And I'm just telling you, His reputation means too much to Him. And for the purpose that He has for your life, He doesn't want to give you something you can't handle. And He promises that to us. And so just, with that, so we went from that and just began to see God become faithful to us in children's ministry. And we tried to do everything with excellence. And one of the things that I said that in children's ministry, Dr. Rich, that my dad was in plumbing. We had a plumbing business, and that's something that I did. And man, I was so meticulous with every detail, like that it would cost most people money to do what we were doing, but it meant so much to me to do it. I mean, if PVC pipe is like stuff that you use to put plumbing and stuff, your plumbing installation in, and it would have writing on the pipe, and I would just always make sure it just lined up perfect. That writing, every detail, it just had to be measured out. And I think that those are the things that God began to separate in that detail that I took serious. I took pride in what we did, and some of the things as a volunteer that I saw in the church that I just felt like were that some people can get away with things or think that they are, and and think, well, I'm just giving it to God. But, I'll never forget listening to a pastor that spoke one time, and he was talking about how they had volunteers come in to do church work, and they were painting the church. And they were going to paint the whole church, and he walked in and he saw all these people volunteer painting in the church. And, when you paint in the church, or paint anything, you're supposed to tape it out. How many of you know how to paint? You done painting? You know that you're supposed to put a cloth down so it doesn't get everywhere. You're supposed to and the pastor walked in and saw that, and he said, what are you doing? And he goes, oh, this is volunteer. And he told if that's volunteer work, I don't want you to volunteer in my ministry. And I thought, wow, that's a big statement. But it's the importance of the details and things like that matter. He deserves so much more than just what a volunteer does. He's not looking at you as a volunteer. He's looking at you as an ownership of the building. He's given this to you as an owner. And you play a part in this. This is yours. This is your church. And so in seeing that, I as a Royal Ranger, we would come in, and there was a person that was there, and we would passionately learn your Bible verses, learn them. I think even Green Bean was so upset that I kept on and on. You can do it, Green Bean. You got this. And it was just amazing to see these young kids grasping the Word of God. I mean, the Royal Ranger motto, ready for what? Anything, work, serve, obey, worship, live, etc. No one of them knew what etc. was, but we can do anything. Let's go, kids. And we were passionate about teaching them, and you would get these little badges after they did a certain little thing. And man, I remember I was so proud to come and say, our kids, that we've done it. We're going to be successful, and they're going to conquer the world. And then I would come in, and they would like, well, we don't have any badges. And I was like, what do you mean? It's ceremony night. We have no badges to give the kids. And to me, that just said, to put a spark in my heart that just said, if I ever had the opportunity, I would never let someone down because of my lack of zeal for His word, His purpose, and doing His work. And God just began to use that. I remember we had nothing. Again, we sold everything to be in ministry, but I remember we went to Big Lots. I bet some of you have never went to Big Lots before. I see one hand. Thank you for raising your hand. Okay. We went to Big Lots, and we just bought this little treasure chest, and we was like, okay, we can't have badges, but we're going to create our own little grab bag thing for that. And we bought a little karaoke system that we were going to preach from a trailer. It was out in the thing. We didn't even have a room. And we were just thrown in a trailer out there, and God began to use us, Dr. Rich. It was just amazing. And God gave us that opportunity in youth. I remember getting to preach in youth ministry. And again, this is just work. This is just laying a foundation, showing up, being available, being a vessel. And then I'll never forget, I was at work with my dad at this time, and Pastor, I get a call, and it's pastor, and here I am. If you've done construction work, it's just, you're sweaty, you're hot. At the end of the day, you're just like, I just want to take a shower and go lay down. It's a Wednesday night, though, and of course we're getting ready to church, and he goes, Tracy, I want you to preach tonight. My heart sunk, and I'm like, what? Is this a joke? Who is this? This is Pastor. I want you to preach tonight. And they said, I heard that you preached in youth, and you did an amazing job. And I want you to preach. And I said, okay. But it was that one of those moments that if I knew that if I didn't seize the moment, that I wouldn't be sitting here today. And every fear, everything, the enemy laughed at me, mocked me. And I just remember, like, I don't even know what I'm going to preach. That's not even this is not what I enjoy doing. And so I will never forget, though, that preaching on the stage there, and I don't even remember what I said, to be honest with me. I love it when Pastor says that my knees were not knocking, they were missing. I really don't even know what I said. I really don't. I remember the title of my message was, "Do you think you're better than Peter?" You probably know that part where he says that all these others will fail you, but I won't. And that was my thing, is like, we all have to stay so humble, even though we feel like that we've given this opportunity, we can still fail. We all have self inside of us. And so anyway, that was the message. And from that moment, just like I said, if you have a calling on your life, let God discover it for you. Let him appoint you for your purpose, and he will. And that just, from that moment, I was given the opportunity to be a children's pastor. I was given the opportunity to be the pastor of family ministries. And then 13 years ago, I was asked to be the executive pastor of the church. Again, no experience whatsoever. Just an obedient heart, a desire to be used by God, and to see where you guys are now, committing your heart and your mind and your spirit to college. I'm so proud of you. The church is in good shape because of each one of you sitting in this room today.
Now you talked about, let's go there next. Let's go to Pastor Franklin next.
Yep.
And the thing that I've always admired, and I've worked with him, since, like I said, 2004. And so the biggest things that I've seen is that he just has this sense. It's like Pastor Franklin is so busy, he could actually run off and start a bunch of things. And Pastor would even know about some. Eventually he'd know about them, but he could have his whole vision for the church and kind of do that. But the thing about Tracy is he's always kept the right perspective that this isn't my church, and that's the leader that God appoints. And he's always seen his job from where I've stood as being responsible. He's that Aaron and Hur lifting the hands of Moses, lifting the arms of Moses, because the battle's going down, but he knows he's got to keep the hands of the leader. The other thing, and this is so important, is that I think Tracy's greatest gift as a leader is that he has the eye gate of our pastor. That's what I see. He can walk into a room and he knows what matters to pastor in a room. He can see something on stage, or he can attend the rehearsal of a Easter production or an illustrated sermon and know that pastor's going to pick up right now that that's not the same energy that they had when we did it before. So the energy's not there. He has that eye gate. As he goes to the campuses, and he'll see trash, or he'll see whatever. He doesn't just see what Tracy sees, and God gave him the ability to see great detail because he works for a pastor that sees great detail. He may not seem like he sees everything because you only see him preach and then he's gone, he's here and he's there. But he serves a pastor that sees things in great detail. I told the second years this morning, I hope you guys all plan on being a dear younger me, because Pastor Tracy has the same gift that Pastor Franklin has. Pastor Tracy will get up and he'll do this all morning, and then he'll come to me after and he'll go, "Where was this student, that student, and that student?" Because he'll know which ones weren't here. Pastor Franklin, I told him, he can look out and he knows what family's not here because he's always seen them that sit in those same seats. But that attention to detail and that eye gate are just some of the things there. And so, Tracy, talk to us about your role. Tell them, just briefly, tell them about their pastor, because they don't really get to be with them like that. So tell them maybe the parts they don't see, and then your role in that.
I would say pastor is a mentor in my life. He's, again, I say the reason I'm sitting here today. I always think back to I've seen some of you preach in here, and you know that it's such an amazing job too. And I've seen some of you prepare and do the things that you do, and you know that pressure of that, right? I mean, that feeling of just, and you're doing it amongst your peers, but could you imagine getting up and doing that every week?
And tell them in here, it was Sunday morning, it was Sunday night,
Yeah,
and it was Wednesday night.
Yeah, and college and everything else. So, but that pressure of that, and knowing the vision and what God put in Pastor's heart. But I see him every Saturday. I mean, there's not a Saturday that I know that he is not laying out before the Lord, praying, not just to come up with something that will tickle the ears of the people, but has a profound impact on your life and on the people's life. He understands the people that God sends into this church. It's almost like this may be the last time they ever hear the message, and that's the way that he prepares. It could be his son or his daughter, and preach with fire, with passion, with such conviction. And I see that every Saturday. I mean, we talk. I have the benefit on a Sunday morning before he preaches to the congregation that we've become so close that he's able to bounce ideas and thoughts, and I'm just an ear for him to prepare the sermon. But Pastor is a person of prayer. He's a person committed to study. He's a person of discipline. And so when I got saved at the church, I told him, I said, I may never can repay you for the commitment that I know that you made on that Saturday night. And I came to that altar. Thank you for not just letting it be a normal day. And I know even now more, and I see how he prepares for that what it took. And so I love what Pastor loves. That became my passion, to know that the things that move my pastor are the things that are going to move me. I was close to him. I mean, I wasn't close in proximity. I didn't have to be around him, but he was my shepherd. I began to learn his voice. I began to hear when he preached. You could hear what he's struggling with, things that were coming from his heart, because it's not just a dialed-in message. If you listen and you get that voice to hear from your leader, just like you hear from God, you will begin to carry that. You will begin to say, I want to be a sheep that's a follower. And that's what I became, Dr. Rich. I just became a sheep that I knew that I could trust with my life, that he was leading me in the past, that I knew that God had in store for my life. And so, but don't ever mistake when you look at Pastor and you think that he doesn't see stuff, he doesn't notice. Like Dr. Rich said, he knows everything. He sees that piece of thing that's driving me crazy right there on the floor right now that I can't get my eye off of. He's into that detail. He comes over here to this building and stuff. He sees you at productions. He's always aware. That's what shepherds do. And they are protectors of the flock. And he understands the responsibility. If we're going to have a college, it needs to be done right. If we're going to have a church, it's going to be done right. And I'm just thankful to be a part of that. I don't know if that answered your question, Dr. Rich, but
It does. One of the things that you like to talk about is that you're always looking for is that ACTS, ACTS.
Oh, yeah. Can I back up on something like that? Don't let me forget ACTS. But can I talk to you just a second about mentors in your life? And I think it's very important that you have mentors. Sometimes you may not even know that they're mentors in your life. I really didn't know what a mentor was in my life until now. I look back in that. But I think a mentor is just somebody that has a profound impact on your life, that you know that they played a significant role. And obviously my dad was one of those, and I look back now that like I mentioned earlier, taught me the importance of a yes being yes, a no, no. Not even being a godly man at that time, but he was always a man of his word. But yes be yes, and your no, no. And even at that, work hard. There's no shortcut. That's what my dad taught me. And then another person that had an impact on my life is my uncle. And he worked for Pepsi Cola. And I got, as a young person, all I wanted to do is wear this little cool Pepsi shirt with these patches. And I thought I was something at the time. But I looked up to my uncle. And anybody ever heard of J&J Grocery? Have you seen that? Like that, J&J was like the place back then, and we would go there, and I'd just watch my uncle. He's kept the shelves stocked with Pepsi stuff for Pepsi Cola, and he would let me wear this shirt, and I just watch how he interact with people. And man, he's like the top salesman for Pepsi. But he taught me detail about that, and he taught me the importance of a logo and the importance of representing Pepsi well. And if you've ever worked at a grocery store or something, in order to get your product on a shelf is one thing. I mean, it takes a lot of work to get your product on a shelf. But the worst thing they can tell you when you put a product on the shelf is if you don't keep it stocked properly. And if someone takes one out, you slide the other one to the front, and make sure that logo's turned right. And when I look back and I see the way the things that shaped my life, that's where excellence started coming in, detail at a young age. It matters. Another person, summer job, man, I thought I'm doing everything with excellence. I'm working hard. I'm doing things great. And I'm checking the boxes. I'm doing everything great. And my employer is going to be so proud of me. I'm going to get a raise. I know I'm going to get a raise. I'm doing so good. And I'm outshining everyone else. And I'll never forget with him, I hurried up and got done with the work. And I'll never forget this moment. I said to him, you walk in all proud and you're like, yes. And I said, I'm finished everything. He said, if you ever say that to me again, I'm going to fire you. I said, oh. And he didn't explain why. I just went and thought about that. And I was like, why would he tell me that? He said, I want you to look around. If you ever thought that you were finished, that's when I don't need you, because that's when you're just getting started. And that shook me to the core. As a young person, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, you have an assignment. And then it took me into ownership. Then I realized I'm not just doing this role that he has. Then he wanted me to get an ownership mentality of saying, okay, I've completed this task. I need to be looking around for something else to be done. And man, that just, again, when I look at the way I do things now, that's where these things started coming in. So, man, when I walk and see something on the ground, it's my property. This campus is not going to look worse than my house. It's going to be pristine. It's going to be picked up. It's going to be cared about. Volunteers are going to be cared for. So those things began to matter. And then another guy that's one of my best friends is Brian Boyd. One thing that I learned about him as a leader, and I challenge a lot of you in doing this, very successful. Surround yourself with people that are way successful than you. If you're me, that was easy to do. But he was such a great guy and loved me. And I don't know why he loved me and why he loves me like he does to this day, but he taught me to love people. And as successful as he was, his employees matter to him more than anything, and their well-being. And what separates him from other people that I watched was like he had this commitment that God gave me this business not to bless me, but to a blessing to others. And so all of his employees, no matter where they're from, they're, all over the makeup of who employees are. I mean, from the smartest to the just getting in, he understood that he played a role in getting them to where God called them to be, and they didn't even know about it. And that has an impact on me to see that that's the way I feel even what I do today. The way that I look at our staff now, the way that is like, God, I'm not looking for them to get something done for me, but how can I help them become who you've called them to be? And when you realize that, you begin to start, again, discovering that purpose and that call of God on your life, that you're not living and not doing the things that you're doing for yourself, but for others. And of course, Pastor Franklin is like, I could never repay him and show him enough honor for giving me the opportunity to do what I do, the trust in that area. So
let's head down the home stretch. Younger youths are sitting here. And so
can I mention Acts first real quick?
Yes.
If you take notes, don't take notes. This is something that's so important for all of you. This is how I did everything. I don't want to leave without talking about this. And how many of you ever heard of Acts? Have you heard me talk about it before? Anybody? Not the book of Acts. That's simple. But the Acts acronym that I've used, Titus, I think I've shared this with you. Probably Lance has shared this because this is passionate about what I feel like Acts is when the first church was being built. The early church was being built, that outpouring of the Holy Spirit. And in ministry, I felt like as we were doing this, Ephesians says that we were to equip the saints to do the work. And, I can't do this on my own. As much as my wife and I were trying to be successful in ministry, we realized we couldn't do it on our own. We couldn't just spend our money. We couldn't just give our energy, but we needed people to grab a hold of the vision. And this is what pushed me to say a growing area in my life. Again, no experience. And how did God build his church? And these are things that I feel like if you'll write this down, Acts, this will help you. And this is something that you need to have in your life to fulfill the vision and the purpose that God, if you're going into full-time ministry, when you build and God has entrusted you with something. Number one, Acts is attractors. Again, as young and vibrant as we were in ministry, it's like, I can't say it enough. I can't do it enough. I can't get out and be a spokesperson for what I know God's called us to do. But man, I said, I've got to find some attractors to this ministry. Again, children's ministry is not the most glamorous at the moment, but man, I was like, this thing is going to be like Disney World. This thing is going to be the greatest show on earth. We're not just... Kids are going to be bringing their parents to church. We're going to see explosive growth in this ministry. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to have this logo. We're going to have billboards. We're going to do all these things. And that was my dream of doing that, the vision of where I wanted to go in children's ministry at the time. But again, I couldn't do it on my own. So I started finding these young attractors around me. I would look for people like you. And I would say, go and tell everybody that what are you thinking? You're not involved in children's ministry. What is wrong with you? You've got to be out of your mind. This is the greatest thing that you could ever do. We have so much fun. We do this, we do that. Just attracting people. I mean, we were on a mission to attracting people. For your life, you have to have attractors. You have to have people that are celebrating your vision for you, that is saying, I see something in you, and you got to get around this person. And that's what we did there, so attractors. And then the next thing is connectors. So it's one thing you can understand. If you have attracted someone, it's very important that you have someone to connect them to. It's the worst thing that you can have in anything is you've attracted this great multitude of people, and then they show up and there's no one to connect them. And we'd heard this so many times in ministry with people, and this is what frustrates me even sometimes today, Rich, when we talk and we go through stuff. It's like, Pastor does such a great job. Come and be a part of it. This, and then we see people not get contacted and follow up. And this is one thing Dr. Rich is so passionate about, is that connection, that follow up. If someone comes to the altar, we're connecting with them. If someone's calling for prayer, I don't care if they're from Japan or just anywhere around the world, we're going to follow up with that person, connecting with them. And I believe that's important. That's dear to the Lord's heart. And so for a connector for me, that was always my wife. I mean, she's such grace for that, is that at our information desk, once they would attract them, man, she was connecting. She was connecting the dots, getting we would fill out the forms, and here, we're going to call this person. We're going to do this. We're going to make sure that they're equipped and have everything that they need. We're connecting them to the ministry. Again, you can bring people in, connecting them. And you need people that connect to you, or you're connecting to something. The next thing that you have to have is what? What's the next letter? T. All right, so that's trainers. And to me, that's something that I'm passionate about. If you know me, Dr. Rich, you again, back to that excellence, the expectation of each thing that's done, I hold that in high regard. If you came to show up, you knew exactly what was expected out of you. If you weren't not just a door holder for me, you carried a vision. You opened the door. I wanted you to see the thing that I wanted you to see. If you were a door holder, is that just look at that kid's eye when they walk in and they see that stage for the first time. That's what I want you never to forget. That wow moment, that moment, and that's what I'm training you to understand is so valuable. Training you to that logo. When you took a vest off in Kid Pack, that you're not just going to lay that vest and throw it down, but you're going to fold this vest this way, and that logo is going to be printed up, or going to be showing up. And every bit of that mattered to us. That, again, back to the detail that I learned from that turning that Pepsi can, that logo mattered, training people of what's expected out of them.
A word that we use in the college a lot, like our core value is being intentional. Intentional. And that's kind of the same thing you're talking about.
Yeah, and then the final thing is supporters. And what a supporter is for that, and that's probably I had that in Jill Hayes, who was an assistant of mine, who, again, she's not here at this church, but again, just still plays a valuable part in my life. I can tell you today, she's still praying for me and my family. Just love that lady. But and so when I say supporter, she understood the vision. She supported my weak side. If you ever heard Pastor, a message that I would encourage all of you to listen to is called Propped Up on Your Leaning Side. We all have a leaning side. We all have that side that we tend to lean toward that just, that's not our best side, but you need someone there that's supporting you and holding you up in those moments and protecting you. And one of the things that's amazing about Jill and what she would do is that, and everything going on, I couldn't remember all the birthdays, and I couldn't remember all the names. I couldn't remember everything, about people, but she knew that I wanted to know. And she didn't hold me to a place like, you should know all of this. But she understood her role in supporting me and would help me in those areas. And I knew that she was covering me and my family in prayer. You need to make sure that you have people that you know that every day that they're praying for you. And hopefully it's people sitting beside you in this room today that are calling you out, supporting you and believing in you. So I encourage you, I tell every young pastor that comes on staff, if you don't have this, you're not going to succeed. I can ask people today, who's your attractor? Who's celebrating what you do? When they celebrate you, who they're connected to? Are you training them? Or do you have a supporter around you that you know is bombarding heaven for you? And is, like Pastor mentioned, a raving fan of yours, cheering you on, believing for you, that you're allowed to speak into your life when that ugly self of you, that stink that's inside of all of us, and we all have it, rises up in us, and you allow that access to say, get your act together. Straighten up. This isn't what God's called you to be. And you allow that support to come into your life. So that's it.
Last question. What kind of things catch your attention in a young leader?
Simple. I like people that, and I don't know if it's just about young people and people in general who are comfortable in who they are, and I think that's important. And when I say that, I like people, especially as a father, I tell kids, my daughters, and you can tell a person by the way that if they look you in the eyes. And I like seeing young leaders that will look someone in the eye. I think the Bible even says the eyes are the window to the soul. And if someone can't look you in the eyes and be real, I've been at this for a long time, Dr. Rich, and I think in life you begin to know those people that are being genuine, that really care about you. I look for people that care about the vision of the house. I look for people that care about me. I think charisma is a big part of who I always want to be. I want people to leave feeling better about yourself instead of me. That's why I struggle with stuff like this, because I don't want you to ever come and start thinking, oh man, he's got something, I want that. And I was like, I want you leaving here feeling better about yourself, what God's doing in your life. He's called you, he's appointed you, he's anointed you, and he has purpose for your life. And that's what I look for, is people who care about others. That's not really pushing to the top to try and get somewhere, striving and thriving. I look for people that care about details, those things that if I had to walk by someone and see that they don't pick up trash, and I want you to look everywhere. I want you to see everything. You're an owner. This is your church. It's not, pastor is the pastor of it, but he would tell you this isn't his church. This is God's church. This is his, and love that. And so those are things that I love for the house. And you can tell when people are praying, when people are reading. I'm not how many scriptures you can quote, but how tender your heart is. If you're a worshiper, I'm a worshiper. I love to worship God. If you, I can tell worship and what it looks like. So I don't know. I think those are things.
I also think, just my observation through the years, you spot the ones with that and then some spirit.
Oh yeah.
Like he'll think about Pastor Tracy. He'll say, "I haven't seen this person. I haven't seen that person," or he'll say he notices whenever you just keep showing up. He notices whenever you're in the places that you don't have to be. You mentioned that before. Just that and then some spirit, which is. It's a powerful, if you haven't heard that message from Pastor, it's a powerful message. It could have been one of his books. It was that powerful. But I just have always noticed, you notice those that do things they don't have to do. And you notice the ones that they just are always here because of their love for the house.
Yeah. And just as, it's not that I notice them, it's more important that God notices you. I don't want anyone of you to leave here and thinking that I haven't noticed you. And that's, I may not know your name, but I notice you. But most importantly, know that God notices you. Showing up, just every day to class, every day to your assignment, to church, to being a vessel, showing up for your friends, showing up. God takes notice. And be ready don't be afraid to take that chance, because it will come on a moment you're not expecting it to, hey, I need you to preach tonight. Okay, here we go, God. Here we go. I don't know what to do.
They don't know how Pastor used to do we used to take an offering in every service. So there'd be a time where somebody comes up and has a scripture to share and a plea and explain why you need to give tonight or today. Well, there was several years where we didn't know who was going to do that. You didn't know until the last song before the offering. And then here come DeMarco with a microphone, and you'd be watching, and he'd come up to you and say, Pastor, I want you to take the offering. So you always had to have something.
I remember preaching on a Wednesday night in children's ministry. In the middle of the message, DeMarco comes and says, hey, Pastor wants you to do the offering. I'm on the stage, DeMarco, preaching. DeMarco is one of our board members, an amazing friend of ours that we serve together. And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying no. Okay. So, but what that created, though, readiness, and it created that I better have someone else to fill that moment. God had the reason for that other person that was sitting out there like you. Here's the mic. I'm going upstairs. And somebody else had to come and fill my role. And it's just an opportunity. Don't run from opportunity. Embrace it. Go for it. And take the moment. Seize the moment.
Last but not least, we're going to be emailing you. Tracy, Pastor Tracy has a...
Hold on, you're going to email... I'm emailing everyone?
We're going to email everybody this.
Okay.
He has a list of about 6 or 7 books that he thinks are must-reads for leaders. Tale of Three Kings.
Oh, let me tell them.
Huh?
Tale of Three Kings. How many of you read? Let me just see a show of hand. Tale of Three Kings. Ooh. Man, read that book. If you have not read that book, it is powerful. Yep. Tale of Three Kings gives you the right spirit. Are you a dart thrower? The next book, very important. These are all easy books to read. I need easy books to read, but they shape you, man. They just mold. Eat That Frog. Brian Tracy. How many of you read Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog? I see some of my Kid Pack folks. Eat That Frog. It's about prioritizing your time. Man, if you don't value your time, no one else will. Man, I remember a guy told me, he said, if you don't wear a watch, it means that you don't value time. I don't have a watch on, but I have a phone now. But at that time, I just realized, I got to go buy a watch. He says that if you don't value your time, no one else will. And it taught me about prioritizing my time. Eat that frog, take the biggest task and eat it that day. Go for it. Prioritize A and B, things that occupy your time. There's some things that you want to do, and there's things that you have to do. Eat That Frog you have to read that book. Next book is called Who Moved My Cheese? I told you these are like comic books. Who Moved My Cheese? Anybody ever read Who Moved My Cheese? This is a book about change. Change comes to everybody, every season of life. You have to read this. It's a cute little story that you'll read about it. It's a beautiful book. Eat That Cheese. The next book that I would challenge you to read is How to Win Friends and Influence. How to Win Friends and Influence Leaders. Anybody read that book? One. I see. Yeah, we're in book study together. Anybody else? See someone way back in the room. I'm going to say this. It's more important than being in college. That book is. I'm just telling you.
You can start reading it at 12:30.
Yes.
Every day.
I'm just telling you, it is so valuable to learn it. Dale Carnegie tells you how to treat people, not being fake, but how to win people. You have to win people. And again, it goes back to that attractors, connectors, trainers, supporters, how to win people and influence leaders. And then the final book, I think that's the last one, is How to Lead from the Second Chair. We're all subordinate to somebody. Everybody is. We all have to answer to somebody. And this book helps me so much with pastor and how it's hard to have a vision for your life and still carry out the vision of someone else. There's no hiding that. I have desires for what I want to see God do in my life, just like you do. And just like Dr. Rich, Pastor Aaron, Jordan, all of you have vision and dreams for your life and how to prioritize what God's doing in your life, but upholding somebody else's vision. It's so important that you understand that, because that's where young leaders begin to miss it. They try to get ahead of God. And you realize that it's okay to be the guy, but we're all subject to the guy. And don't get out in front of God. If you can't hold up Moses' hand, he's never going to trust you and hold up your hands. He's never going to bring that person to you. So, powerful book, How to Lead from the Second Chair. And I encourage you to read that book. Oh yeah, I'm good. I love this stuff now. I'm rolling.
Well, we're going to wrap now, but Pastor Tracy's he's gonna be around if you want to come ask him a question that's on your heart or on your mind or anything like that. Or introduce yourself to him if you haven't met him before. But can we give a Free Chapel College thank you, Pastor Tracy? Finish strong. Finish strong. Have a great day.